One of the biggest parishes in England sprawls across the rolling hills of the North Yorkshire Dales, and at its heart is the tiny, perfect village of Romaldkirk. In 1934, I came to live in Romaldkirk as the village doctor. After a few years, my work took me away, but I took Romaldkirk with me. I've known Romaldkirk since 1919, and of course at first it was just a very pretty little sleepy village right in the middle of the hills. But the more I got to know it, the more I felt it was full of character, and later that it was unique, that no other village had the same sort of character. I've always been interested in photography. You know, I used to wander around the village and take photographs of anything that was happening. It was all grist to the mill, and it helped to fill a picture of village life as it was, as we were living it. In fact, I got rather a reputation. People used to say, you want to watch out because Dr. Dickinson will bob round the corner and take, he shoots anything that moves. You know, I've come up and down this path for many, many years. And I don't think I ever look at these gravestones without thinking of Gray's elegy. The rude forefathers of the hamlet slept. The stones are now leaning every which way, but so many of them are names that are still people in the village, still come up this path to church. It's called the Cathedral of the Dales because that's a term of affection. And all the important things that happen at the church. Weddings everyone came to. And of course it was taken for granted that Dr. Dickinson would be here with his camera and getting pictures of the affair. Romaldkirk had its gossip, and the old village people, as in every village, learned, as they say, to keep the trap shut. Mrs. Donald, she was an old Dales woman to the core. She liked the electricity because it gave her a good light to see to light up the lamps by. Old Mr. Oliver, well, of course, he was one of the old school. He sold everything. Bacon, paraffin, cheese, tea, and all the lot. He had a son, Tommy. He went into partnership with Miss Lawson's cousin, Cleesby Lawson, and they ran a garage together. But I don't think Tommy really liked being tied to a garage, so gradually he drifted back to post office life and became the postman. I've been doing this round since 1945, and I don't feel like giving up yet because it's that nice walk out on the morning that keeps you fit. The Romaldkirk Fair was a great attraction here, and there's thousands of people used to come, and had the sheep and cattle on the green, and there was the farmers standing round selling them, buyers there. There was no auctioneers, they didn't bother with them them days. And then about the centre of the village were all the horses, and they used to run them up the village, and the men used to be standing about and bidding, I'll give her £10 more. No, they wouldn't take it. I'll give her another up, set her up, get on there. They used to gallop up the village nearly to the station, and then there was suddenly one would hit the other's hand, and that was the bargain. But it gradually went down and down till there was very few farmers used to come with the horses, and that was the end of the fair. Everybody knew each other years ago, but not now. Morning, Annie. Nice morning. One letter for you. They've all sort of gone from the village, but I think about Miss Lawson will be the only one that's left that actually went to the school.
I've lived here all my life. My father was born here, and then I was born here, and Father was the blacksmith. And the village school was here, and I went to the school, and there was, I think, about 56 or more went to school in my day. And Mr. Garrett was the schoolmaster, and he was very, very nice, but he was very, very strict. He liked to use his stick when it wasn't necessary sometimes, but we liked him very much. There was just the one big school, and Mr. Garrett taught all the classes. We were all in different forms, and his wife came twice a week and for sewing. So there was 56 when I was going to school, and perhaps more. And then it went down and down and down. There was just 6 scholars in the school. So they had to close it. When the children were left, these 6, they used to go to Cotherson just to fill in.
Now, all the big houses in the village, they all had servants, so 3 and 4 servants. And when there anything on in the village, concerts or dances, they almost half filled the hall with the servants that lived in the village. And there was one chap who used to live here many, many years ago, was Bob Wanless. Now, he knew all the people around there then, and he worked at the hall where they had many servants, and is now still living in Romaldkirk, and he keeps his pigeons. That's his hobby in his old age.
Well, I came here as groom to the hall next door, you see, and I was on with Miss Stobart, what used to have the place, and she had about 7 servants in there, and a lady's maid. It was very busy in those days. It's all altered altogether now. There isn't half of the do there used to be. I wouldn't like to live anywhere else. I hope I finish my days here. I like the pigeons. They put time in, you know, for me, you know, looking after them. And when nobody's here, when I let them out, they generally get away around and out for about half an hour, and then I come down again. As soon as ever they see me in the yard with a tin of corn, they all come down and in. They always come back to Romaldkirk. Always.
They're flying 25,000 feet, our speed's 535 miles per hour. What are you doing when you get back to base then, Robin?
Oh, I got a long weekend coming up, 4 days off, going up to my little pad up north. You go up the M1 motorway, it's about 3 hours drive, and then you cut off at Scott's Corner, and it's miles from everywhere.
I've been in aviation now for about 3 years, and 2 years as an airline pilot. I work for a leading charter operator, whose business is basically seasonal. So I'm able to come up to Romaldkirk whenever I can, just to get away from it all. It's funny that, you know, we're taking people to Spain all the time to get away from it. But I don't think I've ever taken a holiday in Spain yet. I always come up to Romaldkirk. It's changeless in a certain way. It's predictable. You always know when Tommy Oliver's going to deliver the mail. Major Potts always pottering up the fell road on his horse every morning. You can hear him going by, clip, clop, clip, clop. That's what I like about Romaldkirk. I lived in the States for about 10 years when my parents decided to go and emigrate out there, and I didn't take to the States very much. We spent some time in Los Angeles, which is, to me, a dreadful place. Freeways and smog and everything. And Romaldkirk just seemed like a fantasy when I lived out there. The automobile has really changed Romaldkirk. I think without private transportation, these villages would have just died off, I think, unless agriculture had not continued to prosper. I believe we're all incomers to some extent, with the exception of a handful of old-timers. And you can always tell them as you wander down the village, they're the ones that haven't painted their doors white. They've got ivy growing on the front, and there's brown doors and green doors. But all people like, all the incomers, the rest of us have painted our doors white.
That's a good dog. All right. Nice to see you.
Well, I think that the biggest change to the village are people like myself who come in here and buy cottages. Perhaps we're a little more affluent than some of the locals because they're either in agriculture or they have local jobs. So we have more of an income to do these sort of things. So I think we caused the greatest change. I regret it, really. I regret the old days of what Romaldkirk must have been like.
It's always a sort of macabre, sobering thought to me to look at the height of this churchyard, and you'll see it so often in country churchyards. There are 600 years of people buried here, and this ground, almost at the top of a 5-foot wall, isn't so much soil as people. It makes you feel somewhat humble, really. There's a village here that it basically hasn't altered from the Middle Ages, from the 12th or 1300s, until my lifetime. Standing and staring is one's whole life here. You see, when I was in practice here in Haytime, they knew that I was friendly with Billy Kipling and that Billy wanted extra help in haymaking, and I'd be up the field helping him make hay. We had a sports day, and there would be 40 or 50 village children at that sports day, where you couldn't muster a dozen children out of the whole village today. And the sports they played and that the children enjoyed were sports that could have been joined in with by the early Elizabethans. They had a bladder on a stick which they ran round with, and such as the court jester used. If you belong to a village, and you really have belonged to it, you've been part of it. Because a village is not the bricks and mortar anymore, and the church is the building, it's the people.
My grandfather and my father were blacksmiths before me. When I was a little boy, on a night we used to, after school, we used to come and hold the candle for both in the shop and in the shoeing shed, you see, for what they were doing. There was no electric light or anything of that type. He just went on till he was finished, sometimes 9, might be 10, as long as he could go on. But the horses that came that day had to go away that day. Well, the daytime, I've known as far as 20 horses standing waiting, you know, but a lot had never been shut since the daytime before. But we always had someone in, you know. It was never dull, wasn't a blacksmith shop. I've seen as much drunk in there sometimes be drunk in a public house.
I think all Englishmen at heart would like to retire to the country and run a country pub. I think the English let down all their pretenses in a pub. You know, they tend to be themselves. There's a certain coziness, particularly the two pubs in the village here. Before the war, they were basically locals who went to the pubs, just farmers in the evening, you know. And when holiday people started coming out, a lot of the farmers gravitated to other pubs, you know, as the pubs became more sort of trendy.
There's very little trade here in the winter. In fact, some nights we only get about 2 people in. So we just sit around the fire and have a drink. Weekends it brightens up, and we rely really mainly on the tourists, people staying. Most of the pubs now, they get so much trade and they extend the place, and then it loses its authenticity. I purchased the old blacksmith shop and cow buyers at the back, which have been derelict for many years, and we've done those up and turned them into two holiday cottages to let during the summer. I was down in London in the electrical contracting game, but it all got such a rat race that I thought it was time I got out of it. In any case, there's something wrong with you. If you're 50 and you don't want to get out of London. So I looked round for a country pub, and I knew a bit of the Dales, and found this one. It's a proper country pub. We get the both the Beagles hunt and the fox hunt meeting here.
In the first place, our whipper-ins for Tees Valley, they started in 1923, and it was one of the Hutchinsons of Eggleston Hall that was the master. And he got a few hours together and we got this pack going, which was originally the Woodland Pack. But he brought them to Romaldkirk and I'd call them the Tees Valley Beagles. And as time went on, I think it'd be about 1932 or so, that they elected me as huntsman. The master had hounds, and I had probably half a dozen. Many of them were at various people's houses. They were sort of kept as pets. But the others, they were trencher fed. And on the morning of hunting, I used to go down the Eggleston Road so far, and I told these people to let the hounds out at a certain time, and I blew the horn, and they would come about 1.5 miles. The attraction is, in the first place, you're coming out in the countryside, the fresh air.
On you go. Come on, try on.
You probably make for a hill, and then you get on top. You can see the run, because the hare often just makes a circle. This place we're here today, it's the ideal place to see a hunt.
Good morning, Mrs. Oliver.
Good morning, Mrs. McGill. I'm very well. Are you all right?
Yes, lovely weather.
Good,
It's the summer at last.
Yeah.
I've been the village postmistress here since 1940, and I said I would try it for 1 month. And here I am after 33 years.
Yes, oh, I'll see to those. Thank you very much.
The older people are very content with what they've got, and they never plead poverty. I'm sure they think that I give them the pensions out of my own pocket, and when they got the lump sum at Christmas, they were thrilled with it. I love village life. To me, we are just a family. We share our interests. There's a lot of sharing goes on.
The day's walk is up to Bale Hill and Ferryshaw Banks, and we're now settled there while they're going through.
The Romaldkirk Ramblers started because the village people felt they wanted to keep the local footpaths open, especially within the Romaldkirk parish boundaries. But we enjoy our walks so much that they've expanded, and we go farther. We like it because the children love the walks, and I think it's a marvellous way of learning the countryside. We've lived here for about 6 years, and we love it. And it's a wonderful opportunity for just seeing the countryside and nature.
The village station was a very busy place. It was all laid out with a garden, and we used to wander along and see what flowers were coming out. It really was a pretty station. It's a pity that it was ever demolished. I'd like to have seen it left as it was, with its signpost up, with its name. Oh, it was a really good station.
I left here 35 years back, and at the time I left, the rot was just beginning. One or two of the old families had begun to go. They were old, they were failing. And now I come back 30 years later, and they've gone. And whereas in the days when I was here, it used to be rather, should we say, ruefully remarked, that the village was completely controlled by God, Mrs. Addison and the rector, in that order. Well, Mrs. Addison's gone, and the then rector's gone. It's now controlled by, shall we say, a rather smaller hierarchy. It seems to me that even a little village like Romaldkirk has very much the same powers, the same characteristic as an enormous country like China. It can be overrun, but give it time, and it will absorb its conquerors.
I had a lovely instance of that this morning. You were filming on this corner, and my wife and I were walking past that end house with the white gates. The lady was very pleased that we were admiring her crocuses, and she hoped that we'd have a lovely time while we stayed in the village and that we'd like it all. But you know, 40 years ago, I was the village doctor, and I went into that very house to doctor the husband and wife who lived there. I told her I lived here 40 years ago. She said, oh, I never knew Romaldkirk in those days. Romaldkirk has absorbed its conqueror. I'm the newcomer and she's the old-timer now. But if I had the opportunity, I feel that I could come back and belong, and I could take very similar pictures again that I did 40 years ago with the same camera.